You also had a story over the weekend that I'll put up here that is similar to the Bowler quote in the sense of I can't believe that people are just saying this out loud at this point. And your headline here, if people are just listening to it and they can't see it, is Netanyahu Gaza Aid Scheme offers Israel symbolic cover to finish the genocide. That's a pretty straightforward and objective headline to put on what Netanyahu actually said. Like that's not spinning his public comments. That's not even reading between the line. We can pull some of his like specific comments.
I can run through basically what he said if you want.
Go for it.
So yesterday Netanyahu releases this video after he tells the Israeli cabinet, that he's going to start allowing aid in. And there's two components to this. One is what the Israelis are doing right now. Netanyahu is described as kind of an interim week-long or so period where they're going to work. They're going to allow certain numbers of aid trucks in. Although yesterday, the first day of it, they said they were allowing 5 aid trucks in. Estimates are minimum 500 to 600 are needed a day, and that's conservative to address what's going on. So they didn't even make good on it yesterday. The 5 of them were then still held in hock and didn't even really make it into Gaza. But then they're going to have this other scheme, which involves an American company, this kind of new NGO that was formed. But what Netanyahu said to his own people yesterday, and he released a video in Hebrew about this, is, we are going to take control of all of the Gaza Strip, but we need to do this because I'm under pressure from Republican senators and other staunch allies of Israel to not give the appearance that we're starving the people of Gaza. And so what Netanyahu is saying is, we need to do this so that the U.S. will back us in continuing and completing the genocide in Gaza. And so, Ben Gvir, the Interior Ministry head and, loose member of Netanyahu's coalition, goes nuts over this. But his friend, Bezalel Smotrich, who's the finance minister and a member of the war cabinet, he endorses the deal. We understand from some breaking news this morning that he also got from Netanyahu a commitment to expand Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank with agricultural land and new housing developments. But at the core of it, what Smotrich said is in some ways more telling than what Netanyahu said, because Smotrich said, this aid scheme that we're doing, which, by the way, and he says, we're only going to give them some pita. You're still going to see the scenes of desperate people clamoring for food, a bowl of soup and some pita. We're only going to let a little bit in. But the reason we need to do this is so that, and this is a direct quote, our friends in the world continue to provide us with an international umbrella of protection against the Security Council and the Hague Tribunal, and for us to continue to fight until victory. So basically, Ryan, what both Netanyahu and Smotrich, who has been one of the most passionate advocates of mass murdering every Palestinian, who has been one of the most passionate advocates of starving the Palestinians, he comes out and endorses this. The far right kind of goes nuts. And then Smotrich holds an emergency press conference and says, no, listen, if we pretend that we're really going to allow any kind of aid in, then we can continue to mass murder and expel every Palestinian. And he even says himself, this is going to allow us to push hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from North and Central Gaza into the South, where we then can implement what he called Trump's plan, which is removing all of the Palestinians so that Gaza can be developed. Now, there's a micro conflict there because Trump is saying it would be a U.S. development. Clearly, the Israelis would like to then seize Gaza for themselves. But at the end of the day, it's the same point. They believe that allowing aid in is going to, and in symbolic ways and ways that Israel controls, is going to give them the veneer of doing something about starvation so that they can feed the Palestinians well enough to expel or kill all of them.
Yeah, and Netanyahu and Smotrich both coming out and saying this publicly, I think reveals the strength of the genocidal strain kind of running through Israeli politics right now, because both of them are smart politicians. They're savvy politicians. They would prefer not to say that out loud. Like they would prefer that the politics are such that people just get it, that they can do this without saying it. But because you have people like Ben Gvir who are clearly responding to some type of political impulse toward full on like immediate genocide, like they have to then say it publicly. No, we're with you. when it comes to the genocide. I promise you, because otherwise they're getting outflanked to their right by a more vicious genocidal wing of the politics. So it really suggests that the terrain there has taken a turn that is dark compared to even a year ago.
Well, let's remember that as you and I are speaking right now, we are witnessing some of the most horrifying attacks on Palestinians of the entire genocide, where every Palestinian we talk to in Gaza is describing apocalyptic scenes where you have mass forced displacement orders being issued moments before attacks happen, and people are scrambling to grab what they can. And then they're being ordered to go to places like Al-Mawasi in southern Gaza, where Israel has ordered people to go before, and then bombed tents and burned people alive who had obeyed the orders to actually evacuate or to go to Al-Mawasi, increasing attacks on the few remaining medical facilities that are left inside of Gaza. Just the constant burning alive of human beings we're witnessing. And I was just reading a draft of a story from a journalist in Gaza that we're going to publish later this week, and she's describing helicopter gunships, quadcopters, F-15 airstrikes, just nonstop ordnance shelling. I mean, it's horrifying what is taking place at this moment. And Netanyahu's stated objectives include the permanent full occupation of Gaza, but also Netanyahu is saying we're going to start doing things you haven't even seen yet. So, I think we're at a phase now where it is becoming murder. It's mass murder within a genocide. It's also the intentional murdering of civilians nonstop. And as we're talking, and Gaza is burning, and children are being burned alive and murdered, there's talks happening. There still are talks happening. Mm-hmm. There is still, as of this moment, an Israeli delegation in Doha. I think what Bowler said this morning on Fox News, and what he also said yesterday at a so-called Israel Day celebration, is interesting, because I do think that Trump is putting pressure on Israel. It's certainly not the pressure that any of us would want, or to the degree. And I don't think he's pressuring them in a way that is going to result in any just end to any of this, one that recognizes Palestinian self-determination or humanity. But I think there is technical pressure being put on. I don't think Netanyahu would have even agreed to anything about aid, including his scam scheme,
5 trucks, yeah.
If there wasn't, and I also think that the U.S. made a strategic mistake with how they handled the Idan Alexander matter, because I think now they have, Qatar. Trump is very close to Qatar. The Qataris are clearly livid. The prime minister of Qatar this morning once again raises the issue. So there are interesting dynamics. I don't want to get people's hopes up to think that Donald Trump is going to solve the problem, but I'll tell you this. I've spoken to many people within the Palestinian resistance, including people who are involved with these negotiations. And what they are saying is that the only person on this planet that could end this genocide is Donald Trump. So think about it. If you're a Palestinian negotiator and you're going into these talks and that's a kind of terrifying reality, that it's basically up to the whims of Donald Trump. He could end this tomorrow if he truly wanted to. And I don't think we're anywhere near that phase. The phase where I think we're at is Trump going to put enough pressure on Israel that Israel will agree, which is what Hamas is demanding and has been demanding for the entire duration of these talks, agree to entering a framework for negotiating a permanent end to the war. That is, Netanyahu has maximalist demands. I want Hamas to surrender. I want them to leave. I want full demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is not going to agree to any of those things. And we could talk about why, but I'm just telling you, they're not going to agree to those things. So what does that mean? It means that Trump is going, if he wants a deal, which even Adam Bowler is saying in his defense of Trump, that Trump wants a deal, then it's going to mean that there has to be a framework for discussing a full end to the war. And the last component of that is when I said to Hamas officials, okay, so let's say that the Americans get Netanyahu to agree to that. That's what was agreed to in January with the first Gaza ceasefire deal. So what like, why would you do this again? Like how, so Israel just violated again. Are they keeping the ceasefire in Lebanon? No. Are they bombing Syria? Yes. Did they violate repeatedly the ceasefire that was signed in January that both Trump and Biden certified? Yes. So what does it matter if they agree to a path to this? And what they're saying is, yes, you're right. Israel will always violate it, but they have ideas. They're talking about getting a UN Security Council resolution. I've heard some people within, this is not official policy, but I've heard some negotiators float the idea that they want a ceasefire to be publicly announced by Donald Trump. And they want Steve Witkoff to shake hands with Khalil al-Hayya, who is the chief negotiator for Hamas. That's interesting because what they're saying is, we know Israel lies. The US just lied about the Edon Alexander thing. We're trying to get them to do the right thing and keep their agreement. But we want Steve Witkoff to shake hands with Khalil al-Hayya, and we want Donald Trump to publicly announce the ceasefire, and we want a UN National Security Council resolution.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute about the details of this this aid plan. There was a Israeli Army radio report today that I'll put up that again falls into this category of just saying the most genocidal things just completely out loud. So this is the translation, but the Israeli plan to empty the northern Gaza Strip. How will the new humanitarian aid distribution mechanism serve to turn the northern Gaza Strip into a completely depopulated area is the question. Say, of the 4 distribution centers that the IDF is currently establishing to distribute humanitarian aid through American companies, not all the distribution centers are in Rafah and the Morag Axis area. One of the 4 distribution centers is currently being established in the center of the Gaza Strip, south of the Netzarim axis. Establishing the center in this area will also allow Gazan citizens in the northern and central Gaza Strip more convenient access to the distribution centers. But then they say the idea behind establishing the center south of Netzarim corridor is that anyone who comes from the north of the Gaza Strip to the dividing center will not be able to return north of the Netzarim corridor, but will be forced to stay south of the corridor. This will be a, quote, one-way ticket, and it will effectively force the population to come south of the axis if they want to receive food. In this way, Israel intends to expedite and promote the evacuation of the population from the north of the Gaza Strip to the south. In this way, Israel believes it will be possible to completely empty the northern Gaza Strip of its population. This is an Israeli reporter, effectively just laying out, what Israeli officials are saying is the idea behind this new aid effort, which they also say is only being implemented at all so that they can avoid The Hague as they gradually march toward this depopulation.
Well, it's also, this is part of, Netanyahu and Israeli officials' overarching dehumanization of Palestinians and comparing them to animals. This is a trap where you're saying, here, we're going to put the bait over here, which is you need to go to this place to get the aid, and then we shut the door behind you, and now you're in the crate. And it's really, there's something deeply sick about the way in which food is being used with a starving population to try to force them into a decision of whether to likely forever leave their homes. And that's a big part of what this is about. It's why they don't want the United Nations involved with it, except if it's willing to take Israel's orders to literally just give the food out. And the UN, to its credit, which, by the way, the UN has a very effective plan for food distribution, and Israel will not allow it because also Israel is at war with the United Nations and at war with UNRWA. It wants it destroyed. So they've come up with a plan now that serves 2 purposes. One is to be able to say we're doing something about the humanitarian suffering, but we're not going to have a ceasefire, and we're going to just continue on with the genocidal war. And then the other is we're going to make it so that most Palestinians are not in the south of Gaza. Most Palestinians are in the north and central part of Gaza. So the idea is to force people to migrate to the south just to live, and then you cut them off and entrap them in what for the foreseeable future then would be a killing cage, while Israel, with the Trump administration, figure out how to try to remove all Palestinians from Gaza. That's really what this is about. And it's so sick because, I'm all in favor of any food getting into Gaza. right now. I think the whole world wants infant formula to get into Gaza. We want medicine. We want children to have vaccines. Children aren't getting vaccinated against anything right now. This is unspeakable, unconscionable what is happening. So, but they know the level of desperation. So they're saying, well, here's the only way we'll give you food. If we can put it in this crate, and when you go inside of it, we shut the crate, and now you're there, and then we can ship the crate somewhere else. And that's the reality of this, Ryan. So you have, for people that have been following it that closely, the Trump administration in Israel came up with this idea. They had a former U.S. Marine sniper is at the helm of this effort. They registered a so-called non-governmental organization in Geneva, in Switzerland, called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This entity now, already U.S. security contractors have been filmed in Israel. They've arrived there looking like Blackwater-style mercenaries from the Iraq War. These guys are going to be going into Gaza. The Israelis are going to create what they call a security perimeter around bubbles. They're going to have people that have to go through not just a security, but a political vetting in order to go and take this aid and bring it back to their families or their communities. And it's going to be positioned in such a way that it's going to require people to travel very long distances in dangerous terrain at risk of their lives to get calorie-controlled, minuscule portions of aid that don't even represent a double-digit percentage of the need.